Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to introduce the second group today. And we now move to the motion before the House this morning. This House believes that being an influencer is not a real job. We now look to the Honourable Member, Mr. Roldán, to open the case for the proposition today.
Thank you, Madam President, and all the members of the House and the honorable public. It is a great honor for me to speak on the current debate. First, I'm going to introduce the opposition speakers. First, we will hear the rhetoric abilities of Madame Nieves. She's an 18-year-old Guipuzcoan girl who loves writing and whose biggest dream is to see a sunny day. Thus, close the case for the proposition, we will hear from Madame Alaina, who is an 18-year-old girl from Basauri. She's a big fan of Operación Triunfo. I'm very happy to be here today and looking forward to hearing the opposition side. Now, before taking part of this debate, we have to define the meanings of being an influencer and what is a real job. If we see at the Cambridge Dictionary what is a job, we can see that it's a work that we regularly do to earn money. For influencer, well, the first meaning is someone who can influence or can persuade on someone's opinion. But the second meaning is what we should focus on, which is someone who contributes with the industries and get paid for sponsor brands or to encourage people to buy its products. Now, only by reading these meanings, we can see that it can fit in the real job or in the traditional job definition. Why? Firstly, because there's a lack of stability on it. If a job is something that you do regularly, influencer, it's not. Why? Because influencers are on the mercy of the trends or the algorithm to be popular or to be on the top of the people's mind. And the second one is because they are not selling anything to people. They are just popular. Their earnings became by these industries, by these brands, but they are not offering any good or any service to people. In that sense, their value do not remain on them. And this can take many risks if we consider influencers as a real job. Why? Because we are not denying in any way that they put a lot of effort on their activities or they can get money because of this. What we are saying is that, for example, if we think about a real job, we can think also about a contract, about the social security, about the insurance. An influencer doesn't have any of this. And for example, if we see this book, The Burnout Society of Byung-Chul Han, we can see that this idea of self-abuse, of self-working, that we are our own bosses, is just a way of exploitation. And an influencer cannot be taken as a job in that sense, because, as I said before, it is very risky to consider it. Also, there are many fluctuations on this career. There are no plans, for example, for a retirement. There are no plans for a pension, or even, for example, for a paro. So, there are many arguments around that. And also, other people could say that an influencer can be, for example, a kind of communicator or a journalist. But there are many differences about that. Why? Because a journalist or a communicator firstly doesn't only communicate information. They also analyze that information. They also have to criticize that information. An influencer does not that. They could only fit in that definition for example, we call the last minutings, which is showing live on what's happening. But they can have many interpretations. And this can be very risky in the sense that, for example, if we see Homo Videns from Giovanni Sartori, we can read a lot of the consequences of the influence of being a passive viewer in the information dynamic. For example, we lose our ability of abstraction. We lose our ability of criticize the environment. Just to give an example, do you all remember what happened when Shakira broke up with Piqué? Well, there were a lot of influencers, for example, Ibai Llanos, who saw this song about Shakira, but he began to defend Piqué, and all the people forget about all this topic. And you say, oh, it makes no sense. But in the other side, for example, in 2021, Lionel Messi refuted an interview with the BBC or the FIFA, I don't exactly remember. Well, it was this traditional journalist, and he accepted an interview with Ibai. Why? Because he preferred a regular chat instead of this traditional job. So, I am not saying, again, that influencers do nothing or that they are not putting any effort, but there are many risks about considering them as a real job when they actually don't fit in the traditional definition. So, ladies and gentlemen, for all these reasons, the motion must stand. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Roldán. We now look to the Honourable Member, Madame Nieves, to open the case for the opposition today.
Thank you, Madam President, for allowing me to take part in this debate. It falls upon me to introduce the proposition speakers in today's debate. The first proposition speaker is Mr. Roldán, who is a 22-year-old with a very good taste for period literature works. He started studying political science degree in Peru, and now he is a first-year-old student of English studies. Then, closing for the proposition, we have no other than Madame Orrecha, who is a 18-year-old from a rather uninviting place, as we say back in Guipúzcoa, called Bilbao. Luckily for her, now she's living here in Gasteiz with some friends of hers in a flat. I look forward to hearing the views of the opposition today. Well, Mr. Roldán already defined and followed the Cambridge definitions of an influencer and as well as the definition of a job. So I won't repeat it over again. But I would like to argue that the proposition is following the second definition, but this is ignoring that not every influencer falls under those characteristics. That is why we will be following the term content creator, which Cambridge defines as someone who creates content for the internet, especially for social media websites. That being said, by far and away, the most important point is, what is a job? Now again, Mr. Roldán already defined what is a job, but I would like to mark that many people often mix the terms being an employee, working for a company, with being a worker, and this has nothing to do with it. Nevertheless, people ignore the fact that many of these content creators are, in fact, freelancers. They might work with companies, as explained earlier, but their salary depends on themselves. Consequently, it turns out not to be regular. Anyhow, many still argue that it is not a real job, because it is not stable, because it doesn't have vacations, because it is not regulated. It might be true that being a content creator has not always been a job, but it is key to note that other jobs had the same recognition problem. Just like Gether in 2017 explained, being a pilot was not considered a job because flying was not seen as possible back then. But did the Wright brothers give up their dreams? Just because society was not ready to embrace such technological development? They did not, and they were successful. We cannot deny that with new technologies comes new jobs, and these jobs are widely different. Next, it is critical to understand the diverse type of content creators. Now, I will follow as a guide the classification of Gross et al. In 2018, which is snoopers, informers, and entertainers. The snoopers and informers are the perfect example to explain how being a content creator might also be a partial job. The snoopers usually just use being a content creator as a hobby, not really implying all of the media or taking it as a serious job. The informers are those who are experts on a career or an amateur, and their objective is to spread information about it through social media. The last type of content creators are the entertainers, who are usually the full-time jobs. But these entertainers are very diverse on their ground too. Finally, I would like to add the investigation of Sawi et al. In 2022 that talked about the rise of entrepreneurs being content creators to manage their merchandising and advertising. This had a clear impact as well on independent artists, such as Jake, the creator of the famous song Golden Hour. Jake currently has 22 million monthly listeners on Spotify. And this would have never happened some decades earlier. He wouldn't have made that far without being an employee for a company. Being a content creator is the way to be a successful freelancer nowadays. To sing the songs you want to sing without the control of a company. To open that flower store, to be a comedian, an entertainer. It has never been easier to make your dreams come true. Thank you.
Thank you, Madame Nieves. We now look to the Honourable Member, Madame Urrecha, to close the case for the proposition today.
Thank you, Madam President. It is both an honor and a privilege to speak here today. With the sole purpose of supporting Mr. Roldan's position on the motion, I am here to provide solid evidence on why being an influencer is not a real job, as my companions have been discussing. Traditionally, a job involves engaging in activities that contribute to the production of goods or the provision of services. It typically requires a specific set of skills, qualifications, and responsibilities, and when we examine the role of an influencer, it becomes evident that it doesn't align with any of these characteristics. First is the lack of formal qualifications and expertise that define conventional employment. Unlike professions that demand years of education, training, and mastery of specific skills, the barrier to entry for becoming an influencer is significantly lower. Anyone with a smartphone and an internet connection can claim the title of an influencer. This only allows individuals without the necessary knowledge or accountability to influence others through their content. While it might involve communication and creativity, these attributes alone don't necessarily compare to a genuine profession. Many influencers also engage in paid partnerships and sponsored content, where they promote brands or products that they haven't even tried. As a result, many people end up purchasing loads of unregulated and harmful products. And this only raises ethical questions about the sincerity of the influencer's message and its impact on their audience. For instance, last year, in 2022, dozens of social media influencers were promoting this stunning product from the brand Real 10 to millions of followers. What they didn't know was that this product contained potentially harmful chemicals that were banned in many parts of Europe because it could cause serious health problems such as cancer. And this lack of accountability and expertise in supporting events and products to such magnitude demonstrated the superficial side of the influencer's responsibilities. Another thing to consider is their contribution to society. While traditional jobs support the economy by creating actual, tangible products or offering essential services that directly affect the health and well-being of individuals. Influencers, however, often work in an area that is detached from that. As a study conducted by the Nakai Institute of Economics in 2019 revealed, the influencer industry does not contribute to the long-term economic growth the same way as traditional professions do. This absence of a direct and measurable societal contribution questions the legitimacy of the influencer profession as real jobs, especially when compared to those with a noticeable impact on society. So, in summary, as my companion Mr. Roldan and I have stated, being an influencer is not a real job due to the minimal skills and expertise required, the lack of tangible contributions to society, and the absence of stability in terms of work, contracts, and benefits. The recognition of influencers is primarily based on fame rather than the content they create, with income primarily generated from brand promotions rather than their creative work. As we consider the definition of a real job, it is crucial to uphold the standards that have traditionally defined meaningful and impactful professions. It is for these reasons that I urge you to vote in favor of the proposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Urrecha. We now look to the Honourable Member, Madam Malaina, to close the case for the opposition and the debate as a whole.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for having me as one of your speakers today. In my speech, I will be defending that being an influencer is a real job for many reasons. People hate the idea that some influencers are making money from showing lies and unnaturality. They show a perfect body and face that in most cases has surgery and makeup, and earn lots of money, while some people are becoming obsessed with their appearance because of their fake posts. So yes, they create lucrative content, even if their posts can hurt people. But is this the first time we see this behavior? Isn't this the base of capitalism? I mean, nowadays, businesses produce and produce without responsibility. People have become so ambitious regarding money that they only want to make profit at any cost. What about the fashion industry, for example? According to a study done by Business Insider, fashion production is responsible for 10% of global carbon emissions, it dries up water sources and pollutes rivers, and 85% of all textiles end up in dumps each year, among other impacts. But does this situation really matter? Industries continue producing even if they know they are killing our planet. Social media is just another field where we can see this phenomenon. Some influencers don't care about what people can feel or suffer with their posts. They only want earnings, and this, unfortunately, is the way of working of millions of people. So as you can see, being an influencer is quite similar to the jobs we have nowadays, a battle of winning more and more money. Now let me come to my second argument. Not all influencers are pretty faces that foster beauty stereotypes. In fact, some content creators just want to help other people with their videos, but there is a tendency of putting all of them under the same umbrella. Let's see an example. Certain Yehe, better known as Certi Cox, is a girl from Venezuela. She's mainly famous on TikTok because she makes food in industrial quantities for children who live in vulnerable areas of Venezuela. Even if she's making some children happy every day, she receives hate because people need to search for an excuse to cancel all influencers. She has some comments on her videos as, "You don't provide the children with a various diet, you only do this to win followers." People are so persistent. They can't stand that social media has a lot of profiles of good-natured people. Because of all that rejection to them, there have been many cases of mental health problems. Being an influencer is not working little and earning a lot. They have to handle serious issues. According to an exploratory study done in 2023 by the European Journal on Criminal Policy and Research, 70% of Spanish influencers have suffered online harassment and toxic critics. So for that reason, apart from believing that it is a job, we believe that it is a really difficult one. And now let me refute some famous statements. It is said that influencers cannot be workers because they don't have a regular payment. But as Madame Nieves has mentioned, that's because they are freelancers. Their payment is based on what they produce. Their holidays are decided by them. They don't have a boss, and they pay contributions as any other freelancer. So taking into account those aspects is quite a normal job. Moreover, people tend not to consider it a profession because they are monetizing something they really enjoy. And well, chefs who are passionate about cooking, aren't they working? Yes, there are, and influencers just do the same thing. And finally, it is believed that it is not a job because they harm society. But what about the pharma industry, for example? It has been accused several times of medicating the population unnecessarily. And it is still considered a job. So why are bad influencers not working either? We are not discussing if it is good or bad for society, just if it is a job. And now it's my pleasure to summarize the opposition's arguments and close the debate. Life is changing continuously, and with it, professions are affected. Because of the progress of technologies, we have this new term of content creator, a term we all should embrace. It is seen as strange because it doesn't have guidelines. It is so recent that people don't have a basis, they just perform as they want and can. Therefore, a change is needed. We should regulate this job with some rules or patterns so that it is no longer seen as a nonsense and we stop harassment over it. In addition, we want to point out that an influencer is not just a content creator. It is having influence over you, power over what you do. It is time that we understand that not all people want to work for others and that we can turn our hobbies and dreams into a well-paid job. So when you vote today, I urge you to vote for the opposition. Thank you for listening.